So here's a question for you. What do you see? I mean, think about that for just a second. When you walk into a room and you look around, do you notice what you need to notice? And have you ever wondered why there's some people that can see things that other people just don't see? It seems like they have this knack of being able to look around and notice and observe in a way that others can't. What if your ability to be able to see things that others can't has more to do with how you're trained and taught than it does simply natural ability? And what if there's a way to teach our children to notice things, to observe things, to get involved with things because they have perception because of the way we led them? One of the things I loved about the old episodes of CSI was when Grissom would take his staff into a crime scene and he would ask them the question, what do you see? Why? Because he was a teacher and he understood that you could train people, you could teach people to look and to observe and to notice things that they might not ordinarily notice. In the movie Sherlock Holmes, one of my favorite scenes is in the opening when Sherlock Holmes and Watson are pursuing Lord Blackwood, and right as Watson is about to tackle him, he has positioned between him and Watson an invisible glass sword. And Sherlock, with his insight, sees it and breaks it, stops Watson from running into his own demise. And at that moment, Watson says to Sherlock, "How did you see that?" And Sherlock says, "Because I was looking for it." I guess Sherlock Holmes has just trained himself to look for it, to understand why it's important to anticipate and to see something that maybe others don't see. What would happen if you just started teaching your children how to look for it? That's why this month we're talking about the concept of the principle of initiative. Seeing what needs to be done and doing it. Don't you wish as a parent or as a leader when it comes to your kids that they would begin to notice things that need to be done and do them without being asked? And don't you wish sometimes that as they looked at the people in their life that need help, that they would just take the initiative to help them because they discerned and they had perception that there was an issue? And even when it comes to their own life, that they would see things that need to be changed and change them, even as simple as brushing their teeth or taking a bath. But they understand the principle of initiative, which is seeing what needs to be done and doing it. And you know, it's important to understand that this isn't simply a practical principle, but in its concept, this is a spiritual principle. As a matter of fact, God created us, gifted us, wired us to have perception, to understand how to take care of other people, how to make sure that we take the initiative to get things done. He created us a certain way, and one of the greatest examples of this is a man in the Old Testament by the name of Nehemiah. And for practical purposes, we're going to kind of break down the story of Nehemiah into 4 chapters related to this principle. In the first chapter, you know, he is working for the king and he hears about the story of the people in Jerusalem and he recognizes the need and he decides to take initiative and to do something about it. Basically, we're just teaching children, if you know of a situation, if you know of a need, if you know of a job that needs to be done, then you should take action. In the second chapter of the story we want to emphasize with Nehemiah actually takes him from the king's palace to Jerusalem, and we see him riding around the wall making a list of the things that need to be done. The wall that's broken down, and it's actually his initiative in taking action when no one else is that inspires the entire community to pick up, tools and begin to help him rebuild the walls. Then we're going to focus on another part of the story of Nehemiah that sometimes gets overlooked. It's actually while they're building the wall, this issue comes up where there are people that are being mistreated. And Nehemiah, even though he's a taskmaster and even though he's a leader and even though he's an administrator, he stops the building of the wall to confront the issue because he cares enough about the people to say, listen, we're rebuilding this wall to protect ourselves from people on the outside. But what about those of us who are on the inside and how we're treating each other? He takes the initiative to make sure that he deals with the real problems that people are dealing with. Nehemiah demonstrates some amazing things as he writes his journal and the lessons that he learns related to the principle of initiative, related to the principle of seeing what needs to be done and doing it, related to the principle of seeing how others need to be cared for and caring for them, and even recognizing something that's very important to recognize in the principle of initiative, and that's this, that God gives us the ability to do what we do, but at the end it's not just us that accomplishes it or does it. It's us leaning on God to do His part as well. Because in the story of Nehemiah, the most powerful part of the story is not what the people do and what Nehemiah does, but how when they do their part, God steps in and does something that only God can do. The most powerful part of initiative in your life and my life is when we use our ability and our gifts to do the thing that God has called us or inspired us to do, and then we trust Him to do the part that only God can do. That's why the ending of the story is this unbelievable celebration where the people get together and Ezra reads the scroll and God's word becomes more important to them than it had ever been before, because they actually witnessed and saw what God did. And there was an entire generation of children who had lived in a broken down city, and as a result of seeing what God did through Nehemiah and their parents and the adults of that generation, believed in God in a way they'd never believed in Him before. Nehemiah taught an entire generation to see things in a way they'd never seen. We have a memory verse that we hope that your children will learn. It's Philippians 2:4. And it says, each of you should look not only to your own interests, but also to the interests of others. In other words, something happens when you begin to look at those around you in a different way. Something happens even when you begin to look at the needs and the situations and the jobs that need to be done, trusting that if you do your part, God will do the rest. So don't forget the question. Don't forget to help your kids see in a different way. Start asking the question, what do you see? So that when you walk into a room or you walk by someone or you're trying to teach them to see themselves from a different perspective, ask the question, what do you see? Begin to train your sons and daughters to notice things they would not ordinarily notice. That's initiative. Seeing what needs to be done and doing it.